Hello, Keith Rucker here at VintageMachinery.org. Guys, today we are back to working on the metal planer and going to be putting some more parts together on this thing, trying to get it put back together. And the parts we're going to be working on today are specifically with the belt shifting mechanism. So if you can follow along, we got these pulleys on either side that drive the table back and forth. There's a set of gears in here that all run the table. We've all got that all put back in there. When you turn the pulleys here, it's moving things along. There's a set of pulleys on both sides. The way this works is the belt goes up to a line shaft above. There's two belts. One of them has a half twist in it. And basically what that does is gives us a forward and reverse. On the pulleys, on each side, you have a tight pulley that is keyed to the shaft, and you have a loose pulley that just spins on the shaft. When the belt is on the loose pulley, it's just spinning. There's nothing actually driving anything. There's a belt shifter that will shift that belt over, and it will get into one gear. It will pull the table forward. There's a mechanism when it reaches the end of its stroke, it flips a little lever, and it causes this belt to shift. This drive belt goes over to the loose pulley. On the other side, it goes from the loose pulley to the tight pulley, and it drives the table back in the other direction, just shifting it back and forth. And that's what we're going to be working on today. So let's get in here and get all this stuff put back together, and I think you'll have a better idea of how it works. Over here on this side, this is where a little piece comes on the side, and in fact, it's this piece right here. And this engages in some stops, and it just goes back and forth. It's a little shifting lever. There's a shaft that runs through here, and this piece here basically is just the bearing surface for that shaft. It's just a little through bearing, and I got a couple of bolts here that bolts it in place. Have a oil hole up here in the top where you can dribble oil down into this and lubricate that. So let me go ahead and get this put back on. All right, that's got that bolted back on. So this shaft here is what goes through that bearing we just put in. There's a lever up on the top that goes to a linkage. And honestly, guys, I should have done this before we put the bull gear in, but I didn't. So I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to fish this thing in here and get it to line up. I think we can do it. I think what I'm going to have to do is take this bearing part back off, get the shaft in there, and then put the bearing back on. So let me work on that for a sec. All right, we've got that out. Now let's see if I can. I got a little more wiggle room in here. Yeah. Got it. All right, so now we'll put the bearing back in and rebolt the other side here. There we go. All right, so you can see how that linkage goes back and forth there. So over on this side, we've got a key that goes in here. Let's see if we get that positioned. And then this shifting lever should slide right up on top of that. Take a lead hammer here. I think we got it. That, like I said, there's some dogs that will hit this on the table and shift it back and forth. So let's continue on with our assembly and move to the inside of the planer here. So next we got an arm here that connects to a linkage that goes between these two parts. And get this nut off here. This one basically just fits down on this shoulder here and rocks back and forth. Pivots right there, just like such. And coming off of this, we got a linkage that connects here. So this bolt comes through here, connects that there, and we got another bolt here. There we go. That connects to the linkage here. Let me get these bolts tightened up. These are shoulder bolts. They're actually are like a bearing surface on the inside of that hub, or inside that linkage arm. So let me get these in place. And there's a nut that goes on the back that basically jams in there. You want to leave that just loose enough where it will adjust back and forth. And you can see here how this linkage works. This is going to, whenever the table index is over here, it's going to shift this back and forth, which will in turn shift our shifting arms. So let me get these tightened up. All right, that looks good. I'm gonna get some lock nuts and put behind those. I'll be right back. So I lost some audio here because the battery went dead in my microphone. So I'm gonna do voiceover here and kind of talk you through what we're doing. But next thing I've got here is this little track. It's a little guide that bolts down in the bottom. And there's a piece that's going to fit on here. You'll see it in a minute, that slides back and forth. But this just basically keeps that piece moving straight back and forth. Got a couple of bolts here we're going to use to put in. And I'm going to cheat and use my little impact driver to put them in there. Once I got them in place, I realized, hey, I needed to have them a little bit loose. There's some adjustment in this for fine-tuning it. And we will come back and fine-tune it after everything is set up later on and get it set where it needs to be and tighten those bolts down. Next thing I want to do is come in here with my little part that fits on that track down below. So it fits and actually slides on that piece that we just put in. And there's a little piece that fits over that boss on the shifting arm that will actually shift the rod back and forth. And I'm inserting the rod now. This rod is actually where the belt shifters will mount onto. And this is the rod will actually slide left to right to get the belt in the right place. So we're just kind of putting that in there. It got a little bit tight, so I had to actually get a lead hammer and bump it in, and then eventually we were able to kind of get it on in the rest of the way by just wiggling it around. Once kind of got it in the middle, there's a set screw on that center piece. You can tighten it up, and I'll be adjusting this later on to get it right where it needs to be, and then put the actual belt guides in here. So the belts actually fit through that loop, and that will actually shift the belt left and right. And we have one of those on either side of the planer for both the forward and reverse. Next here, if you look in this middle section here, there's an area down here where we got the bull gear and the spur gear that drives it down below. And this is actually an area where chips can fall down inside that center section and clog it. So they put a little guard that fits over that. And it's just basically deflects chips. When the chips fall down, they just go straight down that flat surface and dump out in the bottom. And it keeps those chips from dropping down into that gear and clogging things up. So just a single bolt holding it together. Put it in the first time. It was just a little bit crooked, so we loosened it up, straightened it up there, and you can see that nice gap there. And now we're going to sit here and just check it out, and you can see that it is spinning fine in both directions, not contacting the gear and protecting those teeth. So I think we pretty well got all of our linkages, all of our gearing, all of our stuff that's kind of down in the planer bed is now installed back in here and it's pretty much ready to go. And we've shown this already, and there you can kind of see the how the linkage works and those belt shifters work. So back here, just one more time, make sure you understand you got a belt that's in here. When it's over like it is now, it's on this pulley, so this pulley is loose. It's just loosely going on this one. Over here, the belt is on the tight pulley, so that one is actually going to engage the gear train. When the table comes forward, it hits the index, shifts the belts over. So now this one is on the loose pulley. It's just spinning. This one over here, again on the tight pulley. And because of the half twist in one of your belts, you have a forward and reverse. And we're able to automatically shift based on where we put the dogs on the table. So it's based on the stroke of the table, which are adjustable. We can put those dogs in here, and it just moves this piece back and forth. So we've got some adjusting to do to this. I'll be doing that later on. And just so, again, I'll just mention it here. These shafts are loose right now. When we put the uprights on here, we will have bearings in here for this, so it will actually be nice and tight. But everything looks good, and we are ready now that we can come in here, set the table down on here. I'm not quite ready to do that, but we can do that, and if we cover all this up, no big deal. I wanted to get all this put in here, and while I had access to it is the main reason. So there we go. She's starting to take shape. My pile of parts is getting smaller and smaller as we're getting things back on here. And next step for us for this project, we'll hopefully be working on that this weekend, is I mentioned before we want to redo the leveling feet on here. I had done some stuff early on where I put the ability to level the machine up before it really didn't have any way to do that. And it was the way I did it. I think it would work fine, but I've actually got some better leveling feet since then, and I want to get those installed. So we're going to have to actually take the legs back off, put those on there, put them back on, get everything set back down, and then I'm going to come in here with a precision machinist level, and we'll get this machine leveled out so that everything is nice and flat in all directions. While I've got it in this stage, I'm going to move it just slightly. We're going to move it toward the wall that way and kind of back just a little bit, a couple of feet in each direction. And now's the time to do that, because when I get everything leveled up, I really don't want to be moving it around beyond that. After it's leveled up, we're going to come in here. We're going to actually shoot these ways with an autocollimator, which is a very precision measuring tool that we can measure, basically see how flat and straight they are. And that will allow us to kind of map it out and let us know what we're dealing with before we start trying to start scraping the table in. I know we've got some issues on the end from the grinding process. They kind of flare up in the last 8 to 10 inches, a couple of thou, and it just has to do with the way that when they had this bed on the grinder, when it was magging down, because these ends kind of cantilever out, they weren't, the metal was bending a little bit different. Then when they relaxed the magnet, it caused them to go back in a different position. So not a big deal, not a big deal at all. In fact, it would probably run just fine like it is, but since we're going to be scraping it, we can straighten that out. And shooting this with the autocollimator should give us a much better idea of exactly what we're dealing with there. So that's kind of the next couple of steps, and we're making progress. Things are moving right along nice, and hopefully we'll get this machine up and going before too much terribly longer. Still got a lot of work to do though. That's going to be it, guys, on this video. This is going to be a wrap. So as always, thanks for watching. Comments are appreciated, and please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And we'll catch you on the next video.